In the meantime, there's several stories that we follow here on a regular basis as part of the Morning Edition. And one of those involves what's going on in the world of cyberspace, because we're all there, whether you want to be or not, whether you're actively online or not. So many things that you touch and so many things that involve your identity and your day-to-day life are controlled by computer, and those computers are all linked up there in cyberspace. And so the question becomes, how safe are we? Well, we wanted to bring back a guest we had on some time back. Stuart Reed's with us. He's Vice President of Research and Science with Nominet. And Stuart, number one, thanks for joining us again today. I appreciate you getting up and being with us.
Hi there, Bill. Great to be back. Thank you.
And we're talking specifically about how we guard our infrastructure in this country, in this world for that matter, against people who try to hack in, phishing schemes, scammers, things like that as well. All ways that people get in, and next thing you know, we've seen this happen with municipalities around us recently, where they've been hacked in and they've had ransomware, and they've had to either scrap everything or pay the ransom just to be able to keep the county or the city, municipality running. So where do we stand as far as that's concerned in our electric grid? Because, if somebody can get hold of the grid, I don't know how many days we could go without power on a regular basis.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're seeing more attacks, not less, very sadly. The reality is that, as you said at the top of this, as more and more people become more and more reliant on digital technologies, the implications are that the digital attack surface becomes much wider, and therefore it's a bigger risk vector that cyber criminals and hackers are looking to exploit.
How are they getting into things like the grid? And I know that your company is involved in keeping them out. So what are some of the ways that they've been able to get around?
Well, one of the most recent reports that I've read around utility companies over a period of April to August this year says that at least 17 utility firms were targeted. And the primary way of targeting them at the first point is with phishing. We've heard about phishing for a long time now. It's nothing new. And it's perhaps one of the most common ways of being able to get a foothold into an organization to be able to cause damage. It's probably the most common over email, and it's probably worth explaining for those listeners just to recap what a phishing email is. It's essentially where a cyber criminal pretends to be a legitimate organization in order to deceive somebody into giving them sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details, or as a way of being able to download malicious content or spyware onto someone's PC or computer network. So as I say, the concept isn't new, but the look and feel of these emails can be really convincing now, and so people really need to be aware of those telltale signs.
Especially in the office place if you're working anywhere, but especially if you're working in some place like a power company or involved in a utility or something like that. But I'm curious, Stuart, who are the folks that are behind this? Is this strictly a money play, a power play? Are we seeing any terroristic threats out of this?
Well, I think that it's probably varied, is the reality. But the reality or the common denominator across all of these things is that at the heart of it, data has a value, and people are looking to exploit that data, and also to inflict disruption onto others. I mean, if we look at one of the reasons that utility companies might be targeted or attractive to a hacker or a cyber criminal, there is a huge potential for a hacker to inflict significant damage, and it's not just the ramifications for the organization that they attack, but in the case of these critical services, these power companies, utility companies, it's far wider than that. They're able to impact critical services that impact daily lives of the public.
And I would think because of that, because the greater the risk of something horrific happening, the greater the risk of loss, the more apt these entities being hacked are willing to pay.
Well, and that's one of the things that we touched on last time I spoke, is that, the phishing attacks are often the first stage of an attacker trying to get a foothold into the network. And one of the ways that they're able to inflict damage is using this as a gateway to either download malware or to conduct some kind of ransom attack, and to effectively extort money or hold to ransom the organization to be able to release that data back to them. And as we spoke about at the time, the danger of actually giving into this and paying those ransoms is the fact that you may not get that data returned to you. There's no guarantee for it. You're not dealing with a legitimate company or service. These, at the heart of it, are cyber criminals, and these are attacks on our infrastructures.
Our guest this morning, Stuart Reed, Vice President of Research and Science at Nominet. And Stuart, what is being done to protect infrastructures around the world like this? I know that you work primarily with the UK and you're working with the government there, but what sorts of things are in place to make sure that we are more protected?
Well, as you say, that there are technologies and services that are out there that can help identify and mitigate the impacts of these kind of attacks. And as you rightly say, at Nominet, we're enabling governments worldwide and also enterprises worldwide to identify security incidents such as phishing attacks and ransomware, potential ransomware movements, by giving them early visibility of these potential threats as part of our network detection and response capabilities. But aside from that, there are fundamental basics that businesses and individuals can take. So really simple things that everyone can do from a phishing perspective or identifying a phishing attack. So, the first thing is, do you recognize who the sender is? Are you subscribed to the service that it's purporting to be from? The key here is never respond to an email from an unknown source. The other thing to look out for is whether the domain in the email address looks odd. Does it look like the usual email address that you would type in for that organization, or does it look slightly different? Looking at the from field doesn't always guarantee the email came from that person in the organization they're naming from. So looking at those discrepancies within the email can be really important. The other thing is does the email read in a strange or unusual way? Has it got poor grammar in it, or has it got spelling mistakes? Official emails sent by reputable organizations are generally pretty professionally written, so a message filled with typos or grammatical mistakes probably isn't authentic. And I guess the other thing is, is the email asking you for any urgent action? Because a legitimate email is unlikely to contain phrases like "you only have 3 days to reply" or "urgent action required." So, the bottom line is, don't open a message if you're not 100% sure where it's come from. And if you do open that message and are in any doubt, definitely don't click on any links or download any of the content.
Yeah, I get all these sorts of things all the time that say, here's the file you asked for, and I don't know who it's from. And I'm like, I'm not opening that, because that's an obvious one right there. But what about other things that we could put in place? I know we here at work, we have firewall, we have certain protocols, we have a very good malware that's installed here as far as malware protection is concerned. The average person at home, firewall, worth the money, not worth the money? Is it going to make a difference?
Well, all the things that you mentioned there are kind of a good layered approach to cybersecurity. But if you're talking about an individual at home, I think that the biggest thing is to be aware of the potential risks and also understand how to mitigate those risks from a more of an educational perspective. I mean, we can invest more and more in technology, and they can provide really great safeguards, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to be vigilant and be aware of some of the things that we're doing and clicking on online.
All right, if folks want to find out more about you and Nominet and maybe how to stay safe online, is there an easy way to do that?
Yeah, there absolutely is. So for those listeners that are interested in learning more about what we've spoken about today and also some of the services, we have a website at nominetcyber.com. So please check that out. It has a huge amount of useful information that covers some of the things we've spoken about today.
Stuart Reed, our guest this morning from Nominet. Stuart, thanks for spending time with us. Appreciate it. And we'll be checking back with you here in a few months just to see how things are going, because when we see headlines like 17 utility companies targeted with cyber attacks, makes me a little uneasy, especially when I'm trying to reach for the light switch, and everything I do here revolves around electricity. So I want to make sure we can keep the lights on.
Excellent. Well, look forward to talking again, Bill. Appreciate you bringing me back on today.
All right. Thank you, Stuart. Take care now.